Credit Suisse Asia Investment Conference, and holding a keynote address on risk in Asian markets is the former Foreign Minister of Australia, Professor Gareth Evans, also former President of the International Crisis Group. Gareth Evans, thanks very much for joining us.
Not at all.
You're holding a keynote address on risk, political risk in Asian markets, and I think at this point, for an investor, it's clearer than ever that political risk is something that they need to factor in. Tell us what has changed.
Well, I mean, the Middle East crisis has obviously concentrated minds all around the world, has certainly concentrated minds in China that fears contagion from that and is putting in place security arrangements to reflect that at the moment. Look, political risk is an omnipresent factor, just as natural disasters are, just as economic shocks are. They have to be factored in investor calculations, and it's a constant recurring refrain. In terms of the Asian environment, I think the political risk environment at the moment is not too worrying overall. What was going to be important is a number of long-term relationships, how the US and China work out their relationship, whether it's going to be a struggle for primacy or whether the US is going to acknowledge in every relevant way China's rise. There's going to be issues between China and its neighbours as it flexes its muscles. There's certainly going to be issues as between China and India, and there are going to be quite serious issues, I fear, between India and Pakistan. These are the big tectonic plate issues that are really going to influence the future in this region. I think we can be reasonably cautiously optimistic that stability will prevail, but you frankly never know, and the Middle East has taught us that.
That already addresses a lot of what I also wanted to ask, in that up until now, shaping the geopolitical agenda, or up until recently, has really been a cozy domain of Western nations. Increasingly, it's not the case. And how does that really change the way that geopolitics are shaped?
Well, China's a very big new dog on the global block, and the US in particular has to come to terms with that and think about how it's going to deal with it. Bill Clinton once said, I heard him in private, in a fascinating little comment on this. He said there's two ways, we've got two choices in the way in which the US exercises its great and unrivaled historical, economic and military power. One is to continue to use that power to try to stay top dog on the global block. The other choice we have, which he obviously preferred, was to use that great power, as he said, to create a world in which we are comfortable living when we are no longer top dog on the block. Well, US is not top dog on the block anymore. There's a lot of multipolar competition out there, and how this accommodation is managed, whether we find cooperative solutions to it, partnership solutions, or whether we have competitive and old-fashioned power-driven responses, is going to be very, very crucial for the future of this region. So China's a big player, and India, of course, is a very, very big new player in this region and on the global stage, and how it exercises its power, not least its nuclear power, because it and Pakistan are, of course, key players in this respect, which we have to worry about. This is going to be very, very important too.
The big players in the Asian markets are also very keen, of course, though, to create the right environment for capital inflows. What kind of a role does an investor conference like this then play for setting up dialogue between capital flows and political will?
Well, a little too often it's a dialogue of the deaf, I think. Investors tend to focus purely on the economic dramas, and there's been plenty of those in recent years, miscalculations and stresses, and perhaps not think enough about the need to build in political risk calculations into their both overall and country by country assessments. I think there's more of that sort of dialogue could take place. Equally, while governments are very conscious in general terms of the necessity to create a good environment for business, for investment, because they know the future of their own countries depends upon it, they're not necessarily that good about opening up the channels for the kind of detailed communication that would give each side more long-term confidence about the other's intentions. But I think we're getting there bit by bit. This is a much more cooperative international environment than we've tended to see in the past. One of the intriguing things to me is that there has been a very visible, since the end of the Cold War, trend away from resort to violence as a way of settling disputes, settling problems. There's been a dramatic decline worldwide. Doesn't seem like it when you read the papers or watch television. There's been a dramatic decline in the number of conflicts. People are, I think, learning that there's no sensible way you can resolve conflicts, concerns, whether it's struggle for scarce resources or water or energy or anything else. There's no way to do this except through cooperative strategies. And the business community, the investment community is a very, very important part of that cooperative environment. And I think bit by bit we are getting our way towards a slightly safer and saner world than it's been.
Professor Gareth Evans, thanks very much for joining us
Thank you.
from the Asian Investment Conference.